Hey everyone, it's your girl MissTDrake in the building, virtual building. Today we're joined by Shamanda Burston. I don't even know how to start off the list. A licensed therapist, counselor, executive producer now, author, and I'm sure the list goes on and on. But we're here to talk specifically about the wounded healer. So through both the book and the film, you kind of share your journey of resilience, just addressing different types of trauma, as well as mental health and domestic violence. So I'm excited to kind of hop in there and chat with you a little bit. So I mentioned a little bit, you speak on mental health and domestic violence. So how did your personal experiences kind of influence the creation of the film?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having me and meeting with me today. So in 2019, I released my memoir, which is also titled Wounded Healer. And my memoir is essentially it's like a diary or journal of my experiences from childhood up until like early 20s or mid 20s. And I released the book and I got so much great feedback on it, DMs and reviews, and people were just like, oh my gosh, this really transformed my life. This really helped me. It made me feel seen, or I've experienced these same things. And I was like, oh my gosh. So um, I had this thought, and it was like, maybe you should turn your book into a movie. And I was like, I don't know. So then I actually found a mentor, and that's what she does. She turns her books into movies. And I took a class with her, and I was like, you know what? It's time. I think it's a good opportunity. Let me adapt this book into a movie because it is an opportunity for me to share my story that resonates with so many people, or so many people who don't maybe weren't at a place where they were vulnerable enough to share their truth. So like you kind of shared already, I personally experienced domestic violence from the time I was a little kid up until my own, as a teenager, I was in a relationship where I was experienced sexual and physical abuse. And so again, I just kind of in 2020, I was like, you know what, let me raise the funds, let me turn this book into a movie, and it just took off from there. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. Now we're gonna kind of make some parallels between the book and the film. When I found that, I was like, oh, it was a book first. Okay, so you kind of talked in reference to the book. I believe his name was Carl Jung. He had a concept of like the best, and Carl, don't come for me, but something about the best healers are those who tend to their own wounds or something along those lines. So can you kind of tell me how you personally navigated the balance between, caring for others as well as prioritizing your own mental health, not only when it comes to writing the book and, creating the film, but just you and your everyday life as a therapist?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Carl, I don't so that's I struggle pronouncing his last name too, so sorry, sir. Carl Jung or something like that. I'm sorry. But he coined that term as the archetype a wounded healer. So it's like essentially someone who has had their own experience and they've healed, and because they have gone through the healing process, they're actually able to help other people heal because of that, because they have that direct lived experience. And so for me, being someone who's lived with my own mental illness, honestly, like anxiety, depression, PTSD from domestic violence, and from childhood illness, all these different things. One thing I definitely do and is practice good self-care, because in the film, the main character, she's starting to experience that, like taking care of everybody else, and now her own stuff is coming up because she spent so many years not taking care of herself. So like on a personal level, that is like a huge thing for me, is practicing good self-care. So whether that's my own therapy, which I'm not ashamed of, I definitely advocate therapists having their own therapist. I exercise every day. I go to the gym and work out. I try to eat healthy. I try to sleep. I'm in my dissertation phase of my PhD program, so that's kind of hard sometimes. I have to pull late nighters.
Yeah.
But just practicing that good self care and taking care of myself, and learning how to how to prioritize my own needs, because sometimes it's hard being someone who's recovering from codependency, which is people pleasing, finding it very hard to say no to people because we generally are people, because of the trauma, we generally don't want other people to suffer. So we tend to like have a hard time saying no, and the disappointment from other people if you have to tell them no. But navigating that and practicing radical acceptance and being like, you know what, it's okay. I might have to say no to you, but you're going to be okay. And I'm going to be okay. So, yeah.
Yes. I can totally relate to that. It's once you get over that first telling someone no for the first time, it just gets easier and easier, but it's definitely a work in progress.
Yes, it is. It definitely is.
Yes. So, I mean, just as you using your own story and experiences to create this film and raise awareness about all these important issues, I mean, what do you think makes the storytelling through cinema more of a powerful tool when it comes to not only healing, but educating, people who may experience it and people who just need to know?
Yeah. Well, I honestly, I've been in love with movies since I was a kid. And I remember being a little girl, and that was my escape. Obviously, all this trauma I'm experiencing in my world as a little kid. The one thing besides writing that really helped me was like watching movies. And it's like I could go into their world and I could escape mine for a little bit. So as a therapist, I use it's called cinema therapy. It's using films as a way, as a like a healing technique. So finding films that can really drive a message home, whether it's somebody who's dealing with divorce or they're struggling with substance use or grief, someone who's lost someone. Um, it's so powerful to see the characters kind of play out a story that you can resonate with and that can evoke emotions. And I hope I don't butcher this word, but I think it's catharsism or something, catharsis, whatever. I cannot say that word. I always butcher that word. But basically, it's whenever it's like an emotional release that you can get. So if you've ever watched a movie and you just found yourself just bawling, like just breaking down, that is the power of movies. That is the power of cinema, because you can watch something and not know that that movie, those characters are hitting on something emotionally or something that has been um suppressed in your subconscious or whatever, and you don't know it until you see it and you're like, oh my goodness, and it just causes this release. And so that's what my goal is as a filmmaker and as a therapist, is to help to create and produce those films that can help people heal. And like I said, it could be entertaining, it can be funny, but you're going to get something out of this film or out of these films. So
Yes. And
yeah.
I never thought about it from that point of view. Like certain movies, I'm like, like you may relate to it, but it's just like, oh, it's just because they're just acting so well. But then when you sit
Mhm.
back and reflect on it, like, wait a minute, I might have experienced this. Like, wait, they're
Yes,
really. So no, I love that perspective on it.
I love,
Um,
yes.
but as a Black therapist,
Mhm.
you bring a unique perspective to mental health conversations. How important is it for you to advocate for mental health within communities of color specifically?
Oh yeah, that is like a major thing for me as a Black therapist. Um, One thing, obviously, I'm a PhD candidate, meaning I am in my dissertation phase, and prayerfully within maybe 8 weeks or so or less, I'll be Dr. Shamanda. So one thing I do is I teach. I'm a professor as well. So representation in this field is so important. There are only about 11% of licensed counselors in the world, or in America at least, for sure. And there, it's important that we are represented, be in for me, because the shame around mental health, specifically in Black communities, is still there. It's still considered taboo to have this diagnosis. We all know that, like, we've all grown up around someone or know someone who just seemed a little off, and you just didn't know, like, something's a little off with this person, but the family members would say, oh, they just a little touch or just a little special. They didn't know or couldn't put words to, like, what was going on with them mentally. and or they knew what was going on, but there was a little shame around it, so they would minimize it and say, "Oh, it's just they just look different." My goal as a Black therapist is to help us, Black people, people of color in general, to eradicate that shame. Let's get rid of that shame. If there's something going on with you, if you're experiencing anxiety, if you're experiencing depression, if you had some type of trauma in your life, let's heal from it. Let's go to therapy. Let's work through these things because you deserve to live a healed life. You deserve to be free from living in this chronic pain, mental, emotional pain all the time. So as a Black therapist, it's important for me to say, hey, you know what? I'll put myself on the front line. I would say as a Black therapist, I live with a mental illness. I live with anxiety, depression, and PTSD. I live with that. And if I can get the help and I can say I have this and I want to go to therapy, then you can too, right? Like if I'm going to put myself out here, I'm going to say, yeah, it's possible. It's a real thing, so that people can say, you know what, if she, someone who looks like her, someone's like her, if she can go get therapy and she can say she has these things and live with these things, then I can too. So yeah.
Yes, I love that. And especially now because, it's kind of this balance. Well, I don't know if you're spiritual or religious, but it's God
Yes.
can handle the problem. Okay,
Yes.
sometimes we need a little extra. God not just saying talk to him. We need to talk to somebody that's so I love that, because that's what we need in this community, just that little step of, okay, someone who's experiencing what I'm experiencing and being vocal about it. Okay,
Yes.
that makes me feel a little comfortable to know that I'm not alone. So that's amazing
Yes.
that you use your platform and decided to take on. That's a challenge. So to take that on, along with
Yeah.
all the things that you're dealing with in your life, I commend you for that. I'm in therapy as well, so it's like sometimes I'll talk to my therapist and I'm like, "How are you?" And she's like, "This isn't
Yes.
about me." I'm like, "But this is a relationship, girl. We gotta talk. I hope you're okay." So I love that. I love that. Now I kind of want to jump into the movie and touch on a little bit of what you just talked about. What are some of the stigmas that you mentioned just a few minutes ago? What are some of those stigmas that Wounded Healer, the movie, actually addresses, and kind of in what way did you want to emphasize when it came to mental health, domestic violence, and the trauma? Like, how did you pick apart how to emphasize each of those different, situations?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, Wounded Healer, it touches on it's a very layered story, very layered film. It represents a lot of different people. So you have childhood illness. That in itself can bring a lot of trauma, right? Because as a kid, if you're dealing with an illness, it's like, what's wrong with me? Why me? I'm different. And I'm really hoping that a lot of kids can see this film in a sense, can see themselves in that and see that there's nothing wrong with you, and it's not your fault, because that was something I experienced as a kid. I think when it comes to the main thing as far as mental health, it's the family piece in the film that I think would really resonate with people. In the film, and you can see this in the trailer, the mom in the film, she's saying family business is family business. And I think that Black people specifically, we've heard that term a lot growing
Yes.
up. And I was like, shout out to Cheryl. She played that role very, very well because I think that represents so many of us where the stigma of sharing our business with someone outside of our family is harped on us since we're kids, or as early on as like childhood. It's like, don't go telling your teachers our business, don't go tell the school counselor your business. Oh, we need help with housing, we need help with transportation and stuff, but instead of reaching out, we don't say anything, we just kind of suffer in silence. And especially if you're a single parent and you're trying to make it, you don't want to be embarrassed, you don't want to ask for help. So those type of things, I think that's a stigma that is like right in your face early on in the film. And definitely, again, going back to family, is that there are a lot of things that are kind of swept under the rug when it comes to Black families.
Mhm.
Um, all kind of stuff. So I ain't even gonna go into it, but a lot of stuff. And it's like in a film, you can see that there's different ways to approach it. Like, yeah, one person can go to therapy and heal, but what happens when the whole family goes to therapy
Mm.
and confronts their stuff? That is a powerful experience right there. But again, the stigma around we don't want nobody in our business. So, and then when it comes to domestic violence, I think that the main character in the film does a really good job of showing that it takes a level of vulnerability to say something happened to me, because especially as Black women, we're kind of raised and like, no, ain't nobody gonna do nothing to me, I'm just independent, there's like that trope, this idea. But the reality is a lot of us have experienced a lot of trauma. We have experienced things have happened to us, right? And it's okay to sit and say, someone took my power from me,
Mm.
someone did something to me, and I need to heal that. And if we can release the shame, the guilt, the yeah, I would say the shame and the guilt, and be vulnerable enough to say, this happened to me, I'm still affected and impacted by this, I think that will make a big difference. So those are some of the, I think, the stigmas that are addressing that film for sure. Yeah,
Whew.
yeah, it's deep.
I haven't seen the movie yet, but just from the trailer,
Yeah.
Manda's like, it's time to get it together. I got to do better for me, my family. Yeah, we're going to North Carolina today. So that's what I got from the trailer. So I'm very excited to see it. But I kind of want to talk a little bit about what was the transition from, Wounded Healer, the author, to
Mhm.
now becoming the executive producer on this film. Kind of how were the two formats complementing each other, and what was that like for you?
Oh my goodness. Listen, nobody asked me this question, and I ain't even gonna lie, let me be real about this. And you're someone who's in the media space, so I think you can understand this. Um, so man, like Shamanda, the author, I'm just writing my book. I'm just sharing my story. It's just like me, right? Of course, I work with my editor and my publisher. But Shamanda, the executive producer, had to work with a crew, and I had to work with like distribution companies and editor. Like it was just so much. I had to work on budgets. If there wasn't money for this, I had to come up with money for this. I actually ended up we had to do actually, so this interesting story behind this. I shot the movie once in 2021, early 2021. And this is from crowdfunded funds. So people in my community, they supported the film, they loved the idea of it, and they gave me money. And I shot the film in Atlanta 2021. I didn't like the outcome of it. The quality wasn't good enough where we could get distribution for it and be released. And I was on the floor crying. I'm telling you, I was bawling my eyes out because I was like, oh my God, these people have trusted me with this idea and these funds. They support this project and they back me. And now I'm having my Tyler Perry moment where I put on this show and nobody showed up. Like that's how I felt.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how am I going to get another $12,000? Like he said, like, how am I going to get this to do this again? But I remember specifically God said, do it again. And I'm like, I'm in my room looking like, I know. With what money, God? Like, cause be for real.
Right.
What money? Cause I'm already in the fetal position over here on the floor, crying because I lost all this money, and these people gonna be looking at me like I'm crazy. With what money? So I remember him saying, "Do it again," and I was like, "Okay, God, I was like, okay, God, I'll do it again if you give me the provisions to do it again. If you give me what I need, I will submit and I'll do it again." I kid you not. Within 6 months, I had the funds to do it again. And this time I found a different crew. I found two producers because that's the other thing. When you're writing a book, it's just you. Like I said, you do a small little team. I had to say, you know what, this is not my area. I don't know how to make a movie. I have to be vulnerable and say, I need people who've done this before and who can do this film on a micro budget, right? Because I don't have this large budget. I'm not a Hollywood studio or producer. I don't have that, but it's possible. So I prayed about it. When I say God gave me the provision, He gave me the funds, He gave me producers, He gave me a great director who could see the film and visualize the film and tell the story in a very authentic way that didn't lose its voice, because it's important that, because I'm representing a profession, some of the terminology in the film, it has to be spot on. You can't just improv this film. You can't just change the words. Like you got to say, if I say family roles, you got to say family roles because that means something in the counseling profession. You
Yeah.
can't just use a different word here. Um, and like I said, he gave me a whole new crew who gave me a quality film on a very, a micro budget. So again, it was a different experience. It's very different writing a book than being a producer, and it helped me grow in a way that I can't even verbalize, honestly, because it transformed me not only personally but professionally because I realized this is something that I'm meant to do. But I had a lot of growing pains, and I've had to carry this film for 3 years. It took me 3 years to get this done, and here I am. So this week has been amazing because 3 years later, here we are finally.
Yes, I'm so
Yes,
happy I asked this
yes,
question because that it takes a lot.
yes.
God will tell you one thing and you like, Lord,
Woo!
that faith and trusting comes in because I'm like, I'm not
Goodness.
seeing what you're seeing right now. So what?
Uh-uh.
But 6 months, I mean,
Yes,
realistically, we're like 6 months can sometimes be a long time, but to get that amount in
yes,
that short amount of time, that's amazing.
yes. That's how I knew. I knew God was behind this film. I knew. And every time, and I'm just saying this, so we got to shot the film. It was done by the end of 2021. Then you have 2022, you have 2023, and now we're at the end of 2024. So all of these years, though, there are things that need to be done with the film that have to be funded. They have to be paid out of something. So I've had to work multiple jobs at times. I remember I didn't have a car for 2 years because I couldn't get a new car because I'm like, every time I would get some money, I had to put it toward the movie. And but I just knew it was like I knew the spirit was like on this film. It's like this is bigger than you, Shamanda. If you will sacrifice and be obedient, you're gonna see that it's gonna come back to you, but not in a monetary way. It's not about money. It's about impact. It's like what you've gone through is going to be able to help so many people, not just women, but men and families. And so if you want your life to stand for something, you got to get this film done. I don't care what it takes. You got to get this film out. Film is going to invoke so many conversations, so many families can heal. And I'm just like, you know what? It gives me goosebumps thinking about it. Because if it was up to me, baby, this thing would have been in a box somewhere.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm glad that you listened and you surrendered because
Yes,
now it's what the film came out October 22nd, so
yes,
earlier in the week.
yes,
So you have to let the people know where we can find this movie, where we can watch it, and
yes.
any future, projects or anything you have, going on in the future.
Yes, absolutely. So it's currently right now because there's different release windows for every film. Right now, it's in the VOD release window, so it can be found on. You can watch it on YouTube. You can watch it on Spectrum if you have Spectrum, Xfinity, Fandango at home, any of those VOD platforms. It's also available on DVD. I know people don't watch DVDs anymore, they say, but if you want to support it and add it to your collection, check that out. And then we're hoping with enough support that we can push this film to TV, like a TV and streaming. So I really would love to see. I'm speaking this out now. I'm gonna say it on your platform. I want to see this film on Netflix or somewhere like that where it can be global and people across the world can see this film. And it comes from people supporting this film. And then I want to say, so I'm definitely looking forward to, I have more films that I'm going to produce. I have already written them. Um, every time somebody supports this film, it gives us funding to make more films like this. The next film is going to be telling the story from a Black man's perspective, a Black man in therapy. So we're not leaving nobody out. Um, we're hitting from every angle. So I'm excited to do this work and to help reduce the shame, end the shame and the stigma around mental health. So yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm excited. One, to watch the movie, two, to support you, and three, to see where this goes.
Yes.
I think you've touched on almost every aspect in which women, men, Black men and women experience,
Yes,
even some things that I can relate to as well. So just to see, aspects of normal people's lives be broadcast
yes,
in a way that gives you strength and courage to, possibly leave a situation or just to better yourself. I'm very excited. So I have it on the Xfinity girl. So
yes, I love
I'm
it.
gonna
Thank
be
you.
watching. So I'm excited. And thank you so much. Just for listening to the voice, like I said before, and sticking through this. So I'm definitely excited to see what you produce in the future. And I pray nothing but continued success. Seriously.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you.